Again, this is Dr. Oliver. A lot of the lectures that are given about effective speaking very much contain a lot of the same information, just given in many respects different ways. In this one, we're going to be talking about a variety of things, include some of the misconceptions about effective speaking. For instance, reading is the best way to ensure good speech. There are many similarities between writing and speaking, but a speech is an act of communication with a specific audience. Reading a speech, therefore, undermines it. For example, if you were having a conversation with a friend about your classes and started suddenly reading a prepared set of comments, the conversation would sink. Why? Well, a conversation is dramatic and dynamic and relies on communicating with the other person. A speech is like a conversation in this manner. You are engaging in a shared act of conversation with your audience. Now, we've talked in a previous lecture, we talked about rhetoric, and we just want to make sure that for the purpose of this class, rhetoric is defined as the study and art of effective persuasive speaking. And what's interesting is that there are basically five main parts of rhetoric, or five main parts of effective speaking. Invention is one that has logos, pathos, and ethos. So logos is where we convince people through our use of logic. Pathos is where we persuade people by appealing to their emotions. And we must be careful about how we use emotional rhetoric to appeal to our conversation. Ethos is our credibility. We persuade people by virtue of how our character is, how good our character is, how credible our character is. Therefore, a good speech is a mixture of logos, pathos, and ethos. Let's take a look at how we should organize a speech. Many people feel that, or many experts feel that you should develop the body of your speech first. Now, there are three studies that were conducted where researchers investigated how a speech organization was related to audience perception of the speech. In other words, related to how well the speech came across. And it was the fact that reality is that audiences perceive randomly organized speeches more in a negative light than in a positive light. Audience believe that unorganized speeches are less interesting than organized speeches, and that unorganized speeches are also harder for the audience to recall information. Finally, audiences were presented with a disorganized speaker, and they believe that the speaker that is disorganized lacks credibility. So you need to think about all of this as you create your body, and from your body, then you can look at your main points and your introduction, and then finally you will have your conclusion. There's a variety of ways to organize your speech. And on the screen, there's a variety of ways, and you can find in your text very, very similar to these points. But figure out your points, how much background information you need, how should you arrange your main points? Do you arrange them from the most powerful to the less, or less to the most powerful? And how long should each point be? They should be, if you're giving them the same weight, they should be the same length. Okay? What style are you going to use? Remember that you don't have to memorize, rote memory, the uh, complete speech, but you need to memorize it enough that you understand the direction that you're going and you're not going to get lost. So delivery. Once you have figured out your invention, your arrangement, your style, and your memory, the delivery part shouldn't give you too many headaches. Now, that said, there are a number of delivery issues that can help or hurt your speech, which we will discuss during this semester. However, the basic delivery approach that is focused on in this class is a very conventional delivery. That being said, what we're trying to do is that each of us are trying to find our delivery method. What works, looks good, sounds good, helps our credibility, and goes along with our personality. So generally speaking, that is a categorical topical speech pattern. Okay? It essentially creates categories or chunks of information that go together to help support your original specific purpose. And you need to understand, what is your specific purpose? What are you going to do? You have a general purpose and you have a specific purpose. So let's think about developing your speech. So once we find our topic selection, and all of these are stated as a sentence. So you have your topic selection, you have your general purpose. The general purpose of the speech is to demonstrate. General purpose of this speech is to persuade. Okay? What is our specific purpose? Our specific purpose is to demonstrate how to cook chocolate chip cookies. Our specific purpose is to persuade our audience to vote this coming Tuesday. Our behavioral objective, what specific behavioral do you expect from the audience? And at the end of the speech, the audience will be able to vote on Thursday, okay, or explain, list, describe, write, not to understand, not to believe, not to know, not to feel. No. It has to be a concrete action. So at the what specific purpose do you want your audience to be able to do? So let's take a look. Here's your specific purpose: to inform a group. All right. So the specific purpose of this speech is to inform a group of administrators about how e-learning could be utilized in their school districts during COVID-19. What is the general purpose? It needs to be written in a sentence. The general purpose is to persuade. Of this speech is to persuade. Okay, so if we go, here's another one. Another example of a specific purpose, another example of a general purpose is to entertain members. Again, it all has to be written in a sentence. So the central idea is the thesis. It's a one-sentence summary of a speech. It focuses on the content of the speech and it looks for logical divisions. And the question is, what are the main points of this whole thing? Okay, what are the main points? So let's look at an example. Say that our topic is boycotting Biden's original frozen banana stand, and the general purpose of the speech is to persuade. Should have a "to" in there. The specific purpose is to convince the audience why they should boycott Biden's original frozen banana stand. And then your central idea is Biden's original frozen banana stand poses a hazard for the residents of Orange County and should be boycotted. So that's going to be our type of speech. Okay. So now we have to develop transitions between our points and between our parts. So remember that a transition, in addition to, for instance, not only, as well, in other words, therefore, in summary, okay, if you it is very easy to use a verbal transition. It's difficult to use nonverbal because that's a change in facial expression. It's a pause that most people would pick up. But will they understand that it is a transition? Probably not when it comes to a facial expression. An altered verbal pitch or rate, it can be used. But again, these are very difficult to pick up. Finally, you need to, not finally, but you always review the points, preview the points. The initial preview, you preview your statement of what the main points will be. The internal preview, these introduce and outline ideas of points that will be developed as the speech progresses. They can be used as transitions as you move your audience from point to point. Not a problem at all. So let's look at summaries. Your final summary serves as a transition between your body and the conclusion and summarizes the main points of the speech. It's the review. The internal summary, it occurs within a speech. It can act as a transition and are often used with internal previews, excuse me. Supporting material. Let's think about that, folks. You need to incorporate your sources. Use the author's name in the text method, as I've done here in an example. So Wadsworth, in his lyrical ballad, wrote that romantic poetry was marked by a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. So here is, MLA format follows the author page method of in-text citation. This means that the author's last name and the page number from which the quotation or paraphrase is taken must appear in the text, and a complete reference should appear in your works cited page. The author's name may appear either in the sentence itself or in parentheses, But remember one thing, this is a narrative document, so it cannot, in this case, it cannot appear in parentheses because you do not say anything about any parentheses. So the Wordsworth in his lyrical ballad wrote that romantic poetry was marked by a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. We know that Henry Wadsworth said this, and you will have this on your works cited. So you state the point, cite the source, it must appear in your works cited, and does the quote, the question that you have is, does the quote help to validate your point that you're making? So we need to look at that. In your discussion forum, please put any questions that you have and bring them up in class, and we will go over all of that. Okay, thank you.